the biggest reason that people quit any of those things I just talked about is because they're looking at the big picture, man. So like with SEAL training, there's no single evolution that's that difficult.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, it's 4-mile runs and 2-mile swims, and it's nothing that you couldn't get up from this table and go do right now. But the guys that quit, they couldn't break it down like into digestible pieces.
1 hour at a time, one moment
That's
at a
it,
time,
brother.
one day at a time.
Yep.
One step at a time, one breath at a time.
Yeah.
It seems so overwhelming. You're like, if I can't do this right now, if I'm struggling this moment, how am I going to take on all of this, right? 6 months, 4 months, 3 months. And so we become overwhelmed and in fear as opposed to just one step at a time.
That's it, brother. I remember an evolution during Hell Week. All it was a 1-mile repeat. The instructors just got everybody together and said, all you got to do is run 1 mile over and over again until we tell you to stop. There's no time standards. There's no.
You could walk if you wanted.
could walk. I mean, you had to look like you were running, but you could walk. So I'm out here like, heck yeah, dude. All I got to do is run 1 mile at my own pace on a sunny beach on Coronado Island. Like, this is amazing.
No sprinting,
Nobody's
no
bothering me.
It's like vacation.
Yeah, man. But that was the single evolution during Hell Week where we lost the most guys. And it was because of what we just talked about. They could not, certain people just could not focus on that mile, dude. They all they could think about was all the miles in front of them, which they didn't know if this was the last one or not. So they looked at it as a big picture and they just couldn't handle it. And really it was the easiest evolution that we did in all of Hell Week.
Do you remember how many miles you actually ran?
Dude, I have no clue. And what the instructors do, they just keep it going until enough people quit.
And then like, okay.
And then they call it. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And just they're like, okay, we're going to do 10 miles, 15, 20 miles, whatever, until many people quit.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the biggest thing, dude, about it. And I take that now into like ultra running and even 3 of 7, the business model for 3 of 7 and all that we have going on with that. It's just like, conquer what's like right in front of you. Mm-hmm. And if you can stay in that mindset, on an ultra race, when I'm 95 miles deep into a race and I've got to climb a 2,000-foot mountain, how you think I do it, bro?
One step at a time.
Yeah. I mean, I pick a tree 20 yards ahead of me and I get to that tree and then I pick another tree and then eventually I'm at the summit,
How do you manage your mind and the thoughts of, man, I've got 5 more miles or however many more miles to go, how many more hours to go, days to go, and this is freaking hard. How do you manage the mind that wants to tell you to stop when it seems like there's so much ahead of you, but you're just going 10 feet at a time? How do you do that? When you're tired, when you're hurting, when you're exhausted, or you just don't get tired?
No. That's a mantra we use, right? And yeah, we can talk about that later. But for me, bro, it's like if you will push yourself hard, hard enough, you reach this place. I call it the steady state, and it's where it's not going to hurt any worse, and it's not going to get any harder. It's the steady state, man.
It's going to stay hard.
It's going to just stay just like that. That's exactly right. And it's almost like for me, it's almost like a primal feeling. Like everything else is stripped away and all I have to deal with is this pain, physical pain that I'm feeling. And for me, it's a beautiful thing, man. So I don't...
To feel the pain?
Well, to reach that steady state where everything's just boiled down and it's just so simple, dude.
Yeah. You're not stressing about who's calling you, what's happening at home, friends,
That's
war.
it, brother. Yeah.
You're not stressed about that stuff. You're focused on one thing.
Yeah, and so I guess one way that I manage that, I like getting to that point in the first place. But some way that I guess you could say that I manage that pain is I stop fighting against it.
Ooh. How?
I literally just tell myself, I accept this.
Wow.
And I almost just like in my mind's eye, I see it passing through me.
The pain.
The pain. And you can use this with all different types of things that are uncomfortable, like cold.
Mm-hmm.
If you will stop fighting against it, it diminishes its power. But as long as you're fighting against the pain, or you're using your energy to fight against the cold, it's going to continue to gain traction and power over your mind.
Yeah.
So it's just forcing yourself to let go and stop fighting against that discomfort and just rock and roll, man.
So for the everyday human being who does a 5-mile run, or maybe there's someone going extreme into an ice tub for 2 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel pain after a few miles or that first minute in the ice tub, how would you process that mentally or in your mind's eye when you're entering the ice, when you're going to that 5-mile run where it starts to hurt, you get the cramps, you get the heartaches, sweating? What would you do in that moment? Obviously for you, that's like 50 to 100 miles, but for the everyday human, how would you approach that mentally? Like a process so we could understand. I understand of like surrendering and letting it go through you, but what's a strategy we could implement, you think?
Well, I mean, I think the strategy to implement that particular thing about not fighting against it, I think, is that you could speak it out loud. I talk to myself all the time, and that's something I'm so adamant about, is the spoken word. So,
So it's starting to feel painful. I'm on my 3rd mile. I feel like wanting to slow down. What would I say to myself?
Well, I mean, you can counterpunch that with any number of statements or mantras, whatever works best for you. You know what I mean? Of course, I have some that I use on my own, but that's for me. That would be the number one tool to kind of manage that pain.
A spoken mantra out loud.
The spoken word.
Not an internal mantra or a whisper, but actually saying it, you think?
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, yeah. It has to be said out loud. Yeah.
Okay. Were you gonna say something else?
No,
Sorry.
I'm good, brother.
What's the killer of getting through hard challenges in your mind? What's the thing that kills most individuals once it starts to get hard and they stop?
Negativity, man. Yeah.
The thought process, words.
It's not necessarily the negative thought, because we can't control our thoughts, obviously, all the time. We're going to have thoughts in our head that pop up that we don't want to be there. Mm-hmm. But it's when you give those thoughts power through the things that you say. So I give you an example. One of my best friends going through SEAL training, he came to me one morning and he said he had been, I could tell he had been in a bad place mentally, but he was doing fine, progressing through training. But he came to me one morning and he said out loud for the first time, "I don't think I'm good enough to make it through this training anymore," which was a lie. He was completely physically capable of doing every single thing that we had to do that day and every other day. But when he came and said that, it gave those thoughts that he had, what do you call it? Like lack of confidence, or those thoughts that he was having that he wasn't good enough. Yeah. They didn't have enough traction to stop him until he came and told me that out loud.
Spoke it into existence.
He spoke it out loud. Yeah,
so
man.
You might be thinking, am I good enough to do this? Can I make it through? Maybe I'm not as strong as these guys. These guys are more talented. But once you start saying it to someone else out loud, that's when your body starts to believe it even stronger, and it gets harder and harder to go back into a confident place, I'm assuming.
That's it, brother. Yeah, so like when he told me that, it was just like seconds later he was going to ring the bell.
Really?
Yeah. And there was nothing that I could do to stop him.
It's like he finally believed it 100% and he was out.
Yeah.
Just don't say it, and you're half the way there, right? If you just don't say it, you have a chance.
That's it, brother. That's it. And so your tongue Your tongue is the thing. I compare it to a rudder. Mm-hmm. A rudder is the main control surface that steers a ship, steers the direction of a ship. Your tongue is your rudder. It's going to steer the direction of your life and the outcomes of your situations 98% of the time.
So what you say is pretty important.
Yeah, it's paramount to me, bro. I mean, that's like, I take this to such an extreme that I don't curse.
I know.
I'm a Christian, but not cursing is not a Christian thing. It's because none of those words in and of themselves have a positive meaning. So why am I going to use them? So for me, it is paramount, dude. The things that we say, yes.
Did you ever come to a place where you started saying negative things to yourself during BUD/S training or as a SEAL, where you had to catch yourself, or have you always been clear with your words to yourself?
I have not always been clear with my words to myself. I became more conscious about the power of my words throughout life and doing really, really hard stuff, to where, I've put myself in enough situations with other people around me to see the power of the spoken word actually work, not only in my own situations, but in the men around me or women around me in racing,
Yeah.
So every time I see it work, I'm like, holy smokes, this is powerful, this is powerful. Well, then finally I started going on some podcasts and telling people that it works. And then now I get hundreds of messages a month of people saying, oh my gosh, this works.
What are the words we should never say to ourselves, and what should we say to ourselves every day?
I think that's really individualized, man. Yeah. I mean, as far as the words that you should never say to yourself, it's going to be dependent on the situation you're in, you know what I mean? And then the things that you're saying to yourself, a big one for me is I will not die in the chair. That's a huge mantra, that I use. I won't die in the chair, and that has a whole meaning and story behind it.
What's the brief meaning?
So that was born out of that last man standing race that I did a few months. Well, no, it was back in May, where I was running. We had to run 4.16 miles every hour on the hour. Each one of those hours I would dedicate to a fallen brother in the SEAL teams. And
their actual names?
Yeah, I had a wrist coach that I was wearing, and I would have their, a index card with their face, name, their family's names, their date of sacrifice. And so,
holy cow, that probably gave you a lot more power and strength.
It did, man. But it gave me a lot more pressure too, dude, because each one of these laps was for this guy, and some of those guys were guys that I had spent a lot of time with. You know what I mean? So the way that race worked, there was no definitive finish line. You just kept running until only one runner was left standing. Mm-hmm. So I could not promise my brothers that I would win. I couldn't promise them victory because I didn't know if my body would break, or I didn't know. I didn't know where the race was going to end. So, but I could promise them that if I died in death, meaning death within a situation, not physical death, but death in this scenario would be of my race. If that time came, I would die out on the race course battling for every step that I took.
Not on the chair.
I won't die in the chair. That's exactly
sitting around
right.
waiting.
Yep. So at the end of each one of these laps, there was a chair. So if I came in off the lap in 55 minutes, I could sit down for 5 minutes. And it was hard. A lot of people died in the chair that day,
They're
dude.
like, I'm done.
Because it was hard to rise back up, man. For sure. So.
Did you win the race?
No, I think I was the third man standing. I ran 116.5 miles. And my last lap, dude, was actually my last lap was for a good friend of mine named Blake Marston. And we lost Blake in a skydiving accident not long ago. And dude, I remember looking down at, I went out on that lap, and so it was muddy. I had tied my shoes too tight, and so my shoelaces were sawing through that large tendon in the front of my ankles.
It's painful.
Yeah, so it got to the point that I could no longer flex my toes toward my shin anymore. So every step was like I was dragging my feet like lead weights. So I went out on that lap, and I pretty much, I was broken, dude.
Yeah, your whole body.
But I wasn't gonna die in a chair, dude.
You were out on the lap, though.
I was out on the lap.
You fell on the
dude.
lap, or you didn't make it back in time, and you're
I got out there, dude, and I remember looking down at Blake, and dude, I started crying.
Wow.
Because I knew at a certain point that I could not make it back in time.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, what does Blake think of me right now, and then I just had this sense of peace come over me, dude, and I could see his face in my mind's eye laughing at my poor physical state. Because we always find, team guys do, we always find humor in adversity. I mean, no matter how miserable that got, we would be joking and laughing at each other. So I saw him laughing at me, and then I found a stick on the ground and hobbled my way back to the finish line.
Yeah, so you made it through. It wasn't in the time allotted. It was after the time.
It was after the time. That's
Gotcha.
right. So
116 miles. Wow.
Yeah, but you can apply. I apply that now. That don't die in the chair to all aspects of my life, man. Whether it's business or personal relationships or marriages or you name it, dude.
So you have a mantra, and you'll say this mantra out loud or internally every day when you feel it gets tough.
Yeah, it's used as a counterpunch, dude, to those negative thoughts.
You know what's funny? Like mantras are talked about a lot in kind of the spiritual meditation communities. But you're this hardcore Navy SEAL guy who's saying the power of the spoken word, the power of a mantra, a positive mantra, is what gets you through adversity.
That's it, brother.
And that's the secret.
That's your rudder, man.
So doesn't have to be some woo-woo-y spirituality, meditation only type of thought process. This is tactical, real life strategies that get you through war, actual war.
That's it, brother.
If you're looking for more greatness in your life, make sure to check out this video right here. And also check out our free PDF, The 3 Secrets to Unlock the Power of Your Mind to help you change your life. Download it right here.
And what I had to do with discipline was actively separate discipline from self-discipline.
What's the difference?